Welcome to the Heroes of Hommlet audio drama. This audio drama is a hybrid storytelling experiment inspired by projects like Tale of the Manticore, Legend of the Bones, and the Tales of Mystara. What you'll find here on the podcast portion of this project is an audio drama, much like you would hear narrated from the bones of an audiobook. You won't hear any dice rolls, and we won't talk about the rules of the game. If you're interested in that aspect of the project, please see our YouTube channel. There, we will run an actual play using Advanced Dungeons & Dragons 1st Edition. This video series on YouTube is your companion piece to understand what dice rolls and what role-playing led to the drama that will unfold here on this podcast. A warning: this podcast will contain detailed descriptions of the occult, violence, witchcraft, death, and profanity. If this isn't to your liking, this podcast may not be for you. If it is, then welcome to Heroes of Hommlet. News of this evil quickly spread from the Viscounty of Verbobank to the ears of Prince Thrommel IV, Marshal of the combined armies of Friandi and Valuna, and also a renowned paladin. Compelled to take up the quest, the prince left behind his concerns to the north, promptly called upon his most pious knights, clerics, and his own picked guards to bring down this profane temple. The host of Prince Thrommel crossed the Velverdiva River in the spring of 569 Common Year, and joined with waiting contingents summoned from Valuna and Verbobank. Accompanying these forces was Certain of St. Cuthbert, the lone member of the Citadel of Eight to volunteer aid to Thrommel's cause. The allied column began their slow march to the southeast, and it did not take long before they were joined by a welcome council of demi-human bands from the Lort Mills, Cron Hills, and the Gnarly Forest, who had similarly decided to take action against the growing presence of evil at their borders. An excerpt from the history of the Battle of Amrity Meadows by Mortalin the Mystic. Its age is unknown. The morning came quickly for our heroes, for their sleep had come and gone. Awakened early, they had some bread, cheese, and salted pork at the Electra meal. Balding Pot had steeped his own tea and poured out for him and Finn. Garl seemed completely uninterested, instead spooning out an earthy-smelling powder into some hot water.
Any meal without mushrooms isn't a meal for you, huh?
Any meal without a comment isn't a real meal for you. Let me eat in peace, said the burly dwarf. Hey, the bright side is you and your cart are gainfully employed. Finish up and let's meet with Harold, our newfound holy friend, said Finn. The group paid their fare and waved goodbye to Beatrix and the staff of the Electra meal. In the morning, the streets were empty, and the cold air of Susub caused the halfling to wrap up his cloak. As they began to ready Destry and the mule and prepare for travel, they heard a pinched shouting noise.
Careful now. These are the provisions of the church.
A couple of rough-looking teamsters were bringing about 6 crates up to the ready cart.
Oh, bless you both. Bless you both.
The teamsters stared at the cleric, not understanding or not caring about his social graces. At that point, Harold realized it was customary to tip the teamsters in Verbobank. lest they take it out on your next load.
He put a few silver out in his hand and counted it out. The teamsters grunted their acceptance and shuffled off. Garl began loading the crates onto their mule cart.
Harold, good to see you.
Is that your, is that your traveling attire? Finn eyed his finely oiled chainmail armor and heavy frocking,
Knowing that a long trip in the roads and woods of the Flanays would be miserable wearing that. Harold, understanding that this was a mistake on his part, cleared his throat.
Of course not. I was just getting used to a recent refitting. Understood. We are well outfitted. We've got about 10 days of food. I'm sure the journey will be uneventful. Should be about 3 days with the cart, said Finn.
The acolyte groaned.
He dragged a canvas bag of camping items up onto the cart.
I am also well equipped for the trip, Master Ranger. Finn couldn't help but roll his eyes a little bit,
But he turned his attention to the cart.
it was packed well, the mule had been fed,
And the sun was barely up. The group soon got on the road. They were headed out south and east. For about 6 miles out,
the road outside of Verbalbank is very well maintained, and caravans containing commerce, pilgrims, and all kinds of folk make their way in and out.
farmers and other homesteads dot the countryside another few miles out. Out there, the occasional merchant caravan would pass through,
Trading goods with farmers,
and making its way to Verbalbank. Along the way, the party elicited some smiles, some smirks,
and also some caution from merchants.
As the sun began to set, Finn took a look at the countryside for appropriate camping areas. Soon, the darkness began to take over, and the party put up a fire. They also threw up some canvas lean-tos. Balding Pot lit his pipe, Garl steeped some hot water, and Finn began to oil and tune his crossbow.
Dramatis Personae, Harold Tibbets. Harold is a human male, just 19 years old. He grew up the son of a cobbler. His parents earned a living on and around the Verbalbank area. One unfortunate night befell his father, who was unjustly killed leaving a tavern. As it turned out, his father had gambling debts. His mother, heartbroken, turned to church life. Harold soon realized that justice and law must be served, and that all that had befallen his family stemmed from the well of chaos. He began as an initiate, but soon his wisdom, commitment, and sheer willpower allowed the young man to excel. However, his lack of social skills, short temper, and inability to get along with several church officials limited his ability to rise in the church. He truly wants justice. He truly wants to do right in the world. Most of all, he wants to prove to Waverly that he is worthy of the responsibility given to him.
Come on. Just one more hour.
"Look," said Garl to Baldy. "Quiet." The halfling rolled over, and Garl pointed off in the distance at 2 massive lynx. They lithely moved up and down a tree, snacking on a pair of hares. Finn seemed, against all normality, to be speaking to them. By the beard, how is that possible?" said Harold.
By Biori, my friend. Many gods work their ways, not just the good cudgel.
The woodsman came back to the camp, 2 rabbits over his shoulder. He had begun a cook fire, and rabbit would be the morning meal, it seemed. The 2 great cats at a safe distance began cleaning each other, content to lounge in the branches, bellies full.
Friends of yours?
Said Balding Pot. Yeah, I rescued them as kittens. Mother, killed by furriers. Garl let out an audible sigh. They're always here, but rarely will you see them. May I ask, what kind of cats are they? Said Harold. Giant lynx, as far as I can tell. In these woods, they're pretty much apex hunters. They hunt completely silently. Their coats pretty much blend into any low grass. Out here west of the gnarly forest, though, they're pretty rare. I saw you speaking with them, said the priest. Sometimes they speak to me.
Biori's will is fickle, said the ranger. Harold couldn't seem to quite wrap his head around the answer, but he accepted it. Regardless, we'll be eating the same breakfast. Rabbits, said Finn. After tea and the meal of roasted hare and boiled wheatmeal from their rations, the group moved further southeast. The day passed without incident. The weather was fair, but as winter began to creep in, it got a bit cold. The following day saw the first day of fire sight, and again favorable travel conditions. The first of the month brought more cold. If I must admit, Master Ranger, I had much worse expectations of living outdoors. This is a refreshing change from the smell and the crowds of Verbabonk, said Harold. Wait till it rains just above freezing. You'll be begging for your bed back at the temple, said the dwarf. Another night of quiet passed. The morning was less fruitful, and the group ate some rations. Finn, how near are we to Hommlet? We should roll in before sundown, Balding Pot. Maybe a couple of hours before it if we make good time. Well, as long as the church is still open, said the halfling. Well, the Church of St. Cuthbert is on the very north edge of Hommlet, if I recall. We'll go ahead and stop in there, and then the Inn and Tavern is on the south edge of town, and it's very well regarded. Oh, what's it called? Said the dwarf. The Inn of the Welcome Wench. Finn shrugged as the rest of the party let out a good laugh. Don't tell Beatrix, said the halfling. A day of great weather and increasingly friendly chatter followed. So, is it Harold or Brother Harold? Harold is fine, said the acolyte. Technically, I'm an acolyte. Somewhat better than an initiate, but not quite as revered as a priest. Yes, well, so what do you know of this Turgon? Said Balding Pot. Well, not much if I'm being honest. He had been stationed in Valuna, I believe. His father is known as some kind of a war hero. Sacrificed himself in a massive battle maybe over a decade ago. Not too far from here, actually, said Harold. Emerald Meadows, muttered the dwarf. Yes, Garl, that's it. As I understand it, forces from all over the Furyandi, good men, elves, dwarves, gnomes, even Heflin like yourself, Balding Pop, joined to smite some awful cult, intent on bringing a demon lord loose. Well, looking around here, I take it they won, said Baldy. Yes, but as I've read and heard, at great cost, many good people died, and the conflict also worsened the relations between men and elves. Gnomes as well, said Harold. Hey, shh, said Finn in a whispered tone. Carl, muzzle and calm Destrian, said Finn. What is it? Muttered the priest in a concerned voice. Finn brought a finger to his mouth, indicating silence. He then pointed to the grassy underbrush off of the road. Harold squinted, shrugged, and shook his head. Balding Pot turned his head around and pointed again, this time closer. The acolyte then saw it. Two well-camouflaged lynx prowling away back the way they came. This is why you can't ambush a ranger, my friend, said the halfling quietly. Finn then pointed at Harold's noisy armor, running the metal links through his worn hands. Harold nodded his understanding and quietly pulled a mace from his belt. More hand signals sent Balding Pot a bit off the road to scout, as Finn and Garl slowly moved, low to the ground. After this roguelike dance had gone about 20 or so yards, Finn and Garl's eyes met Baldy's. The halfling had a pained expression. He coyly pointed away, back the way they came, knowing Finn and Garl would be unlikely to listen. Finn gave him a chiding glance and pointed to the two bound and gagged prisoners off the side of the road. A wagon with 2 horses appeared to be being repaired. A huge, burly man with a spear chided 2 cloaked men working on the repair, while 2 other brigands, wearing black cloaks, were passing the time beating on the 2 prisoners. I see it. And with flames, said Garl. Finn gave Garl an affirming look, and he knew that it meant action. The ranger quietly looked back at Harold, who knelt about 20 yards in front of the cart. Finn held up 5 fingers and then made a fist. Then he held up 2 fingers and he pointed to his own heart. Harold knew his intent and began creeping up, slowly muttering a prayer. Soon he was behind Garl. Balding Pot had closed without making a sound. This group of villains were about 30 yards ahead.
"This cannot stand. In the name of him, we must free these folks," said Harold. I need no more convincing than my eyes, friend. Take a look at the icon on those cloaks," said Finn. "Eyes with flames above. Farlagan has put them on this road," said the halfling.
The party crept a bit closer, being careful not to make any noise.
"Friends, gather here, close to me," said Harold. "O Cuthbert, bless these men. May we strike true and just."
Harold quietly held his holy symbol aloft. The others shrugged and began to take aim with their weapons. Finn let loose a bolt. It whizzed past and hit the wagon with a thud. A stone similarly drifted off target, left and high. Garl, seeing the wind, took an extra moment and loosed a sheaf arrow. A hooded man wheeled to look at the quarrel in the wagon, and he never saw the arrow. It struck him directly in the soft flesh of his neck. Emerging from his throat, he frantically grasped at it, fell, and began squirming on the ground. Harold was still mumbling to the heavens as the miscreants now turned to spot their attackers. The ratcheting sound of the heavy crossbow being loaded was quickly drowned out by the screams of the remaining 4 evildoers. They began a mad rush down the dirt pathway. This next time, Garl's arrow missed high, but a stone from Balding Pot's sling careened off the chest of a short sword-wielding bandit. The air left his lungs with a thud. Now just 20 yards away, the seething anger was clear. Harold, now seeing the spear-wielding warrior, and hearing new and colorful language he'd never heard before, held his symbol aloft and yelled, "Protect me, Cudgel of Law!" The other 3 were slightly confused by Harold's continued prattling, were able to squeeze off a few more shots. As the bandits charged, the ranger squared his crossbow at one of the men and put a bolt directly in the eye socket. This bandit took a few more steps. The brigand hit the ground before the noise of Garl's bowstring could echo off the trees. Unnerved, the halfling shot low, but Garl's arrow struck the huge spearman right in his thigh, eliciting a scream of pain. As the brigands closed, the clash of steel resounded. The party barely managed to draw their weapons in time. In their haste, none of their blows struck true. A short sword-wielding thief managed to draw blood on a glancing blow off Finn's forearm. Pulling out a fearsome mace, the hulking warrior lumbered into the fray. Steadying himself, Finn saw the uninjured brigand raising his sword to strike Garl. Finn pivoted, swung, up and to the right. His long sword entered in the man's armpit with a popping noise and extended out of his shoulder. He ripped the blade back and a torrent of fluid escaped from his enemy. The brigand clasped awkwardly with his one good arm and then fell to the ground. The horror of the man's death cry caused everyone else to miss in a series of off-kilter blows. Recovering his footing, Garl shifted back and drove his spear into the hooded man's leg, eliciting a howl of pain. This thief, distracted from the stab through his legging, barely avoided a fatal blow from Finn, instead catching a deep cut near his shoulder. Balding Pot and Harold were unable to get through the big man's parries. His size belayed his quickness and deftness with his mace, but the harassment caused both enemies to swing wildly and miss. The 2 remaining brigands considered fleeing, but the corpses of their fellow highwaymen told them that mercy may not be on the menu. "Surrender!" yelled Harold.
"Our master will deliver a far worse fate than you fools. Never,"
shouted the dark-cloaked warrior. The huge man's shouts of zealotry gave them an edge of momentum. He wheeled around with his mace and slammed it hard across the halfling's shoulder. As he pulled it back across his neck, the halfling reared from the impact, tumbling to the ground. The other warrior, a badly wounded thief, lunged at Harold. However, a glint of blue light seemed to guide the blade left, missing his abdomen. Harold, Garl, and Balding Pot were all unable to bring the huge warrior down. Finn, however, saw the staggered thief miss Harold and found an opening to put his blade between the bandit's shoulders, killing him in an instant. The dark warrior yelled, his mace raised high, and he screamed, spit, blood, and teeth streaming from his mouth. The mace came down and to the left, cracking down on Garl. Garl barely got his spear up in time, but it still knocked him to one knee. Garl gritted his teeth and thrust his spear up and under the studded armor of his rabid foe. The tip drove deep, and hot crimson ran down the oaken shaft, and the big man gargled, huffed, cursed, and finally fell forward, sliding down the spear and leaning on Garl. I thought you said this was going to be uneventful, Finn.
Baldy! Buddy! Baldy! Are you hurt?
Said Garl in a concerned voice.
My shoulder, I think it's out by the socket. I can't turn my blasted neck.
The halfling thrust a foot in the side of the limp dead warrior.
Fucking sod. Yeah. He hit like a horse. You're injured, Master Dwarf, said Harold.
Yes, but I'll live. Go see to those prisoners. Finn scurried around the wagon, looking for survivors or tracks indicating more bandits.
Let me help you,
said Harold. He ungagged a large half-orc, and with Finn's help, cut his bonds. In a bellowing voice,
Satch! Satch! Ah, my cord!
The half-orc, dressed in rags, sprinted over to a tall, bloodied human. He lifted his head and let out a weak sob.
Oh, my friend. My dear friend. I'm so sorry.
Harold and Finn hurried over to the fallen prisoner, as Balding Pot and Garl inspected the corpses of the foul marauders.
Maybe I could help. I'm a healer. I'm a priest of St. Cuthbert, said Harold.
Many thanks, but he is off to the fields at Elysium. He is sporting with Cord. His name was Satch Magmar. Mine is Bor Thorensen. We are pilgrims of Cord. Well, I guess we were.
The pilgrims. You were passing through Verbabonk a couple of days ago, said Finn.
Ah, yes, the kind woodsman. You helped us refill our water skins and help us find our way, said the huge half-orc. Yes, Finn said, with his eyes down, saddened by the scene.
Finn, Harold, look!
Balding Pot held an onyx cloak with a yellow eye with flames billowing over it. He put his hand through a gaping hole.
Bastard won't be needing the cloak anymore.
You know these vermin? The half-orc asked, as he carried his friend over to the wagon. Yes, we've encountered them. Murderers and assassins of the same ilk. We're hunting them for murdering a lady in Verbabonk, said the ranger. The half-orc pulled a 5-foot-long Zweihander from the wagon and a well-worn set of plate mail. As he began to put it on, he looked at the 4 rescuers. They gazed at all 6 foot and more than a half foot of warrior. His arms bristled with power. Finishing the last strap, he turned and said, "This hunt isn't over until I find my friends, and this gang of cowards are split by my sword." You've been listening to Heroes of Hommlet, an audio drama built on an actual play hosted on YouTube. The background music used in Heroes of Hommlet is licensed from tabletopaudio.com under the Creative Commons Attribution Non-Commercial No Derivative 4.0 International License. If you want to leave feedback, have a question, or a comment, please visit our YouTube channel at 5 Magics Game Club, or just search Heroes of Hommlet
on YouTube to find the actual place. Thanks again for listening, and see you next session.